It is said to have been created in ancient Greece, around the 6th century BCE, for the tyrant Phalaris of Acragas. The device was horrifying in its design. It was a life-size hollow statue of a bull, made entirely of bronze. A small door was built into the side of the statue. The condemned prisoner would be forced inside. Once sealed, a fire would be lit beneath the metal structure. As the bronze heated, the temperature inside would rise rapidly. But the cruelty did not end there. According to historical accounts, the bull was engineered with a system of tubes and chambers, designed to transform the victim's screams into sounds, resembling the bellowing of a bull. To those standing outside, the cries of agony became distorted into something almost theatrical. Whether every detail of this story is historically accurate remains debated among scholars. Some believe parts of the tale may have been exaggerated over time. But what is certain is this: the legend of the Brazen Bull became a symbol of absolute tyranny, a reminder of how rulers once used spectacle and terror to maintain control.
In the heart of ancient Rome, entertainment was not always harmless. Inside massive stone arenas like the Colosseum, thousands gathered to witness spectacles of blood, power, and dominance. Among the most infamous punishments was a practice known as damnatio ad bestias, condemnation to the beasts. Prisoners, criminals, prisoners of war, and sometimes persecuted minorities were brought into the arena unarmed. Massive gates would rise, and from the shadows emerged lions. These were not random events. The animals were captured, transported across continents, and kept hungry to ensure aggression. The purpose was not simply execution. It was spectacle. The crowd watched as fear filled the arena. The emperor and elite officials sat above, observing from protected seats. In this setting, punishment became public theater, reinforcing the absolute power of Rome. For the rulers, it was a message: defy the empire and face its strength. Historians debate how often these events occurred and who exactly was targeted, but there is no doubt that executions involving wild animals became part of Roman entertainment culture for centuries. In the cold stone chambers of medieval Europe, there was a device designed not to kill, but to break. It was called the rack. Unlike execution methods meant for swift death, the rack had a different purpose: confession. The prisoner would be laid flat on a wooden frame. Their wrists were tightly bound to one end, their ankles secured to the opposite end. At first, nothing happened. Then the executioner would begin turning a handle. Slowly, the ropes tightened, the body stretched, muscles strained, joints began to separate. If the handle continued turning, shoulders and hips could dislocate, ligaments would tear. It was a method built on gradual escalation, pain increasing inch by inch. The goal was not immediate death. The goal was submission. In many cases, the rack was used in prisons and royal interrogations across Europe, particularly in England and other parts of Western Europe.
In medieval England, treason was considered the gravest crime, and the punishment was nothing short of horrifying. Unlike executions for ordinary crimes, this punishment was designed to serve as the ultimate warning. In the first stage, the convicted traitor was tied to a horse and dragged. Humiliation accompanied the journey. The message was clear: betrayal would not go unnoticed. Next, the victim was hanged. The executioner would cut them down before they fully expired. The heart and intestines were removed. Sometimes, ashes or fire were applied to intensify the punishment. These were displayed publicly across the kingdom, often at city gates.
In the darkest chapters of human history, punishment was not always about execution. Sometimes, it was about fear. One of the most disturbing torture methods ever recorded is known as rat torture. Though often associated with medieval Europe, variations of this method appeared in different regions across history. It was designed not for quick death, but for psychological terror and forced confession. The method was simple, cruel, and horrifying. A prisoner would be restrained, often tied to a wooden surface. A metal container or cage filled with live rats was placed against the victim's body. The open side of the container faced the prisoner's skin. Then, heat was applied. As the metal heated up, the rats inside began to panic. Desperate to escape the burning enclosure, they would attempt to burrow through the only available exit, the human body. The true weapon here was fear. In many recorded cases, prisoners confessed before physical harm even began. The mere sight of the cage, the scratching sounds, the knowledge of what might happen, was often enough to break someone mentally. Rat torture represents a brutal truth about historical punishment systems. Power was maintained not just through death, but through terror.
Mercy, please, I beg for mercy. I am innocent. Spare me. Have pity on me.
In medieval itself, justice was not silent. It was public, it was powerful, and it was meant to be feared. In parts of the Holy Roman Empire, a punishment existed that terrified entire towns. It was called breaking on the wheel. The condemned was brought to the center of the town square. People gathered from everywhere. Merchants stopped working. Families came to watch. Church bells echoed in the air. Justice was a public display. A large wooden wheel was placed in the center. The prisoner was tied across it. Then, the executioner stepped forward. He carried a heavy iron bar. The punishment was slow, deliberate. Each strike was meant to send a message. This was not only about the criminal, it was about control. It was about power. It was about fear, sometimes. After the sentence was carried out, the wheel was lifted high above the ground, left there for everyone to see, a warning to anyone who dared to break the law. But as Europe entered the Age of Enlightenment, people began to question cruelty. Philosophers asked a new question: should justice destroy a person or reform them slowly? This brutal punishment disappeared, not because it failed, but because society began to change. History teaches us something important. The harsher the fear, the harsher the punishment. And sometimes, punishment tells us more about the rulers than the crime itself.